So when you're doing a layout of your chassis here, being able to get tools on things is nice. Ergo, I can get a wrench on the back of that nut. Had I moved the servos further out, you know, these are all things that can fight you later down the road. Disconnecting the uppers. Now, I don't know right way, wrong way, you know, when doing something like this is just my way. You guys will come up with your own ideas, whatever makes sense to you. Like I said, it was important to me that, you know, I use existing holes wherever I can, and that's easy to do when you're making your own pieces. So pull out the BC. Oh, there's one tire. There you go. Okay, so BEC, nothing really. Just a very simple thing. It's acting like a chassis brace up front too. so I don't really need to buy the, or maybe I will, the T-reel piece or whoever's, you know, if you can make your own, that probably cost me, I don't know, 50 cents of material. So that's where it's nice making your own stuff, for sure. She's getting loosey-goosey now. So the front drive shaft, there's a little bit of magic going on here, not a whole lot. It was just shortened. Okay, the Revo output on the transmission, I've actually lengthened or shortened that 5 millimeters. That was just, again, fighting for every millimeter you could get, but you'll do what makes sense to you. Servos disconnected. Right. Ooh, making a mess. Okay, so looking in here, this is right here. This is the mount. Secures 1/2 of the servos. Also acts as a chassis brace. Blah blah blah. It ties into my top reinforcement plates. You have to have something to mount servos to, and servos being upside down, we'll show you that later. Pull the and there's the fuel tank mount. Very simple. Mounted it in the middle, just clears the A-arms. Also machined a little register in it, so I can use 1 bolt to tighten it so the fuel tank can't turn like that in the chassis. Drive you nuts having to fiddle with it. Other than that, up front, sway bars, I've converted over to Crawford Performance Engineering. Only trick, I had to drill these holes out to 3.5 millimeter because I'm actually using little brass servo isolator, the thingies that go in the rubber for your servo mounts. They're the perfect diameter for the Crawford bars, so just I had to drill one of these holes out 3 to 3.5 millimeter versus 3 millimeter. That's the only mods on the front frame rails. Everything's factory holes, as we can see here. Pull these out for the servos. All factory holes. Up to you what you like to do. Again, if you're making your pieces, it's not that much harder to make it to fit existing holes. Just a little bit more effort. Okay, so we got our servo mounts removed. Okay, our fuel tank, as I was showing you earlier, mounts like this, keys into there. It's just what made sense to me. All right, 1 bolt, pull your fuel tank out, servos out. Now front suspension, other than the sway bars, and my links are stock length. I just made them myself. They're just a little bit thicker, 9.75 millimeter versus 9 millimeter. Drive shaft shortened, all the axles stock shocks, no holes other than just making 2 holes bigger. So very easy to replace frame rails if you bend anything in the front. Just have to widen 2 holes up front. The back, I have to do absolutely nothing. Nothing's been drilled in the back. So, okay, heart of the beast, before we run out of time here. This is basically where the whole project began. I'll just pull the skid plate off. One thing I found with the stock LMT, I get the whole mounting the motor this way and the chassis and the torque twist and all of that. I found it kind of hard to pull the side frames off the chassis. That transmission was, I don't know, I just seemed to fight with it. As you can see with this now. I kind of eliminated that aspect of it anyways. Bolts are out. Frame just come right off. Okay, so skid plate. I literally took my milling machine and I just machined the whole plastic center differential housing right off. Just made it a flat skid plate. And because that left a big hole, I don't know, there's a cover. Under there, I just made some plates to just kind of, reinforce that big gaping hole that was left. So it keys into this inside of the chassis, frame. So it's as strong as you can make that piece anyways. All right, so we're looking at the Revo Trans here. This was a bit of a nightmare piece. I had to adapt the Traxxas rotor. You can see these 1, 2, 3, 4. The Traxxas shafts use little pins that just engage in there to, allow the brake to float and do its thing and drive the axle, and that's how it locates. So I had to actually make an adapter hub that keys into the rotor just because I wanted to use the LMT front shaft. Yes, I have to cut it, but I have, 2 spares now because my brushless truck has MIP in the back. The Nitro truck has MIP in the back. So it gave me 2 spare drive shafts. So why start using someone else's, right? We can see all the brakes in there. Very big brakes. Linkage wise, it's a little tight in here for all this for sure. Your brake is the top. How can I show you this clearly? The brake at the top basically just pushes, okay? And your reverse is, again, just a push-pull. I don't know if we can see the action there, but that's your forward reverse, all right? But getting 2 servos in here with servo horns with, having to make your own linkages, and that took some thought. That took some effort for sure, but it all fits. And being only inside here 66 millimeters, like I said, not a lot of work on this chassis to do all this kind of stuff. So we can really see the cutout of the Revo transmission there for the spur gear. Robertson is, it's an upgrade, I think. So, and again, any strength that was there, I think I've more than replaced because, Losi never had that part there. So any force here through the gusset plates, through the front, it's as good as a guy can make it. Pulling out the transmission will be the last thing. So I've actually used the cage support holes to mount my transmission. And I've also used, these were the factory cross braces that went in front and behind above the center drive shafts. I just repurposed those holes into my transmission mount. And that's it. Not hard to get that side frame off. So this is the talking point here. So obviously I've had to cut this. I've had to relocate 1, 2, 3 holes, or 1, 2, 3 mounting points. The rear was mounted lower anyways, so it just maintains the stock configuration, but it's moved back 19 millimeters. So in my case, it's actually a stock upper length suspension link. It's a stock length of the upper, so I had to make the longer one 3/4 of an inch longer to match. Pretty simple. I've drilled and countersunk 2 holes in here just to support the chassis plate. You know, they're both like that. So, you know, when you have to make a hole, you have to make a hole, but as long as it serves a purpose, you know, try to do it as clean as you can. If I had to redo it, you know, I could have left a little bit more material in here. It was just, again, 38 tooth Traxxas into 40 tooth Traxxas into 44 tooth Robinson. The offset kept moving and engine kept moving and lots of figuring out there. So anyhow, that's the left side plate. So again, like I was saying with Losey's transmission, it's all good until you want to pull these side frames off, and then it was a bit of a puzzle for me. Personally, the cush drive, that E-clip, is what drove me the battiest. Comes off easy enough, but trying to get that sucker back in there, I think the rubber of the cush drive expands or something happens in there. So we got no cush drive now. There's the other mid frame. So this, as I said earlier, replaces this. All right, so I didn't want to brush this motor mount. That looks a lot cleaner. This side would have the servo mount, which you can see keys into the chassis there. And that's the upper support. Easy enough. So the Revo Trans, like I said, you don't really need aluminum for this, but you know, it's not hurting anything for sure other than a little bit of weight. This truck ended up being 12.2 pounds and my brushless truck is 12 pounds. So it's kind of shocking. It's only 0.2 pounds heavier than my brushless, but that's the way it works out. So this is basically where the whole project started, was making these mounts. How you're going to mount it into the chassis, that'll be your puzzle where it starts. Again, you want to have it, you know, so your outputs are centered on the chassis, you know, centered in between your links, right? As close as you can get it anyways. And clearance-wise, on this side, you know, absolute fluke. I didn't even have to notch clearance anything for the Revo transmission. Now, my mounts are only 1.5 millimeter wider than the mounts on the Revo transmission. So to say this just fits in there, just fits in there. You know, we're 66 millimeters on the outside here. So the Revo Trans is 63 millimeters wide on its mounts. So not a lot of fudge room there, but we can see the offset. That's really what allows. And what I thought in my mind when I did this was, with an offset spur, could I get my pinion centered in the frame? If I could center my pinion, I could center my engine. And the narrow part of the chassis is front and rear, so that's only 60 millimeters. So it all fits, folks, but you know, you got to put some thought and effort into it for sure. All right, well, you know, hey, look at there's the Losey LMT Nitro, all in pieces. We'll pull her back together. Next video will be the run. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.